Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Opposition Senator calls for audit of children's home island-wide. UNICEF calls for strengthening of child protection systems. And later in sports, Reggae Boys coach arrived for official stint. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shane Masters and here are the details. A call this afternoon for an audit to be done of the children's homes that are operating across the island. Opposition Senator Gabriella Morris says this is needed following the damning OCA report, which was tabled in Parliament on Tuesday. Details in this report. Speaking on TVJ's Smile Jamaica on Thursday, Opposition Senator Gabriella Morris says the findings of the Office of a Children's Advocate into the engagement of Embracing Orphans founder Carl Robansky by the CPFSA has cast a shadow of doubt on the country's child care and protection systems, of which there were already skepticism about their effectiveness. Senator Morris says the country needs to be assured that the wards are being protected.
People have always been skeptical about the systems, and now to find out that within the organization that's entrusted to actually protect children who are in the care of the state, there's so much, there's this even whiff of corruption. So it's really saddening, and, it really has to cause us to introspect and really move quickly to cauterize the effects of this. We have to ensure that we go back and look at the people who are engaging our children. A background check, come on. Those things should be simple. They should be done. We need to know who are engaging with our children. So it has to be a complete overall in my estimation.
She asserts that the CPFSA Chief Executive Officer, Rosalie Gage Gray, should be held to account for disobeying the instructions of the Ministry of Education and step aside to facilitate further investigations.
We have to then start to look at personnel at every level, because the report also noted that, other persons within the organization would have been involved and would have also tried to, put some stopgaps in the investigation. And that, to me, is quite disturbing. So as we try to rectify, we have to look at every level, what's happening with every personnel, and know that, within even the home that some of the young women were staying, there were some situations with caregivers, with the managers of the homes. So we have to look at all of that, because if we start at the top and then leave the body, then we still have the problem there.
In the meantime, she is calling for the necessary resources to be provided to facilities which care for wards of the state. This despite Information Minister Robert Morgan stating that $3.1 billion is allocated to the CPFSA on an annual basis to carry out its functions.
I don't even think that this is just a head of an organization problem.
Right.
It's a general problem that we have, I think, in terms of negligence in the system. And I find that we have to get to a point where we start to recognize that these wards of the state, these children, these human beings are just as important as anybody else. And we have to give that same level of care and attention and resources to actually ensure that they're protected.
Executive Director of Jamaicans for Justice, Michael Jackson, is calling out Education and Youth Minister Favour Williams and the ministry for not acting sooner ahead of the OCA report. Ms. Jackson says although the ministry had been misled by the CPFSA head, she insists that the minister or her technical team should have conducted its own fact-checking when discrepancies were observed.
Listen to the minister detailing meeting after meeting where updates were provided by the CPFSA. If one assumes that there was some dereliction of duty to begin with, one would then assume that the minister and the technical personnel within the ministry ought to have substantiated some of what is being told by the CPFSA, and it cannot be through the OCA doing an extended report. So I think immediate actions that were reasonable should have been taken by the minister. So I don't think what the minister said really comforts us in any real way.
Ms. Jackson is also suggesting that the Public Services Commission should have been called in sooner. She says during the course of the OCA investigation, there existed enough reason for the minister or the permanent secretary to bring in the Public Services Commission.
OCA first mentioned that there were obstructions being faced, my question then becomes, what reasonable actions were taken by the ministry through the Permanent Secretary Office for an official complaint to be made to the Public Services Commission? Having listened to the minister, one does not get a sense that that complaint actually occurred. And remember, this report was extended based on what the OCA is saying because of that obstruction. So I think there was a delay and a lack of proactive behavior from the ministry in even addressing all of these concerns. And I find it problematic.
And in light of the Office of a Children's Advocate report, UNICEF has called for the government to improve the country's child protection system and increase child-focused public expenditure to reduce its reliance on external funding sources. UNICEF says this dependence can potentially threaten the rights and safety of young people. The organization says it is deeply concerned about the findings of the OCA's investigation. It noted that a UNICEF Commission evaluation of a child protection system in Jamaica highlighted serious challenges related to coordination, oversight, monitoring, and resource allocation in the sector, especially as it relates to the most vulnerable. UNICEF says current policies and services urgently need to be strengthened to prevent and respond to all forms of violence against children and to safely maintain children in families. A 2-year-old boy is dead after he drowned in Commodore District, Linsett in Catherine on Wednesday. He has been identified as Anthony Richards, otherwise called Tonton. It's reported that the child was seen floating in an uncovered man-made fish pond in the backyard of his home. It's further understood that his mother attempted to administer CPR, but her efforts proved futile. He was taken to the Linsett Hospital where he was pronounced dead. An investigation has been launched into the circumstances surrounding the incident. To more details now on the issues causing the delay in the naming of the Constitutional Reform Committee. It was revealed in Parliament this week that the opposition had some reservations. But what are the opposition's sticking points? The details in this report. And we do apologize for that. We now take a quick break here on the Midday News, but please stay with us. The details when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. In a TVJ News follow-up, an elderly woman's plea for water did not go unnoticed. As Kodian Bat reports, a concerned family took the initiative to help.
2 weeks ago, a story carried in primetime news highlighted a long-standing issue for residents in Needham, Penn, St. Thomas: no water. But this desperate plea from 70-year-old Nora Lewis.
We need water! We need water! We are crying for the We are here! We have so much water. We need you. We have a walking stick. We can't want to drop in the bad road. We need water.
Caused an emotional outpour. And on Tuesday, Miss Lewis' cries of frustration turned into tears of joy when she was surprised with a water tank by a family in Clarendon.
We mobilized some support. We collected some funds. We bought a 400-gallon tank. We took it all the way here in St. Thomas from Clarendon, and we are now in the process of putting on the fixtures and fittings. We are getting some water to put into the tank because we want Miss Lynn to have water so she don't have to walk with the stick with a bottle of water on her head just so she can have some water to drink.
The tank is estimated to cost $75,000 and was installed by the family themselves. Though the tank was not filled the same day, Miss Lewis was grateful.
The tank helped me a lot because I can't carry water. Thank you very much.
Promises were made by the mayor of Morant Bay, Hubert Williams, to have water trucked to her home by Wednesday, but up to news time on Thursday, water was yet to be trucked to her home. Last week, the National Water Commission also made promises to restore the community with water by this week. That promise is also yet to be fulfilled. Kodian Barrett, TVJ News.
Back to an earlier story. To more details now on the issues causing the delay in the naming of the Constitutional Reform Committee. It was revealed in Parliament this week that the opposition had some reservations. But what are the opposition's sticking points? The details in this report.
Based on email correspondence which our newsroom has received, there seems to be a discord between opposition leader Mark Golding and Legal and Constitutional Affairs Minister Marlene Malahoo Fort over matters which are to be addressed by the Constitutional Reform Committee (CRC). In a letter to the Constitutional Affairs Minister dated June 3, 2022, Mr. Golding said he did not see a need for the Charter of Rights to be reviewed at this time. He also noted with preparatory work already done for Jamaica to adopt the CCJ as its final court, bringing it back to a committee would be a retrograde step. Mr. Golding, however, did not have any issue with the removal of the monarchy, as there has been consensus on that issue. In her response on January 5, 2023, Minister Malahoo Ford said the CRC is being formally constituted. She says the reform will be done in phases, with phase 1 focusing on the transition from a constitutional monarchy to a republic. Phase 1 will also look at matters for which a referendum is required. As for the Caribbean Court of Justice, she notes that the adoption of the Caribbean Court of Justice (CCJ) as the island's final court of appeal is not a settled issue. It's why she says that will be put before the committee during the second phase of the process, which will begin after the tabling of the bill to provide for the Republic of Jamaica and related matters. On the Charter of Rights, she said that a review of aspects of the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms is of high priority for the government to ensure that the right balance is struck to facilitate the implementation of solutions to some of the most pressing challenges in the nation. But those responses did not satisfy the opposition. Mr. Golding on January 10 stated that he believes that the serving of the monarchy and the Caribbean Court of Justice matter should be treated as one. He further requested that he be made aware of the specific changes which the government are intent on pursuing. He says only when that is done and he's satisfied, he'll provide the names of the opposition members who will be included on the Constitutional Reform Committee. Anthony Lugg, TVG News.
The St. Mary Police are on a drive to rid the streets of unregistered motorbikes in the parish. Sergeant Christopher Ward says these bikes are not only a nuisance in the parish, but they are the source of a number of road fatalities. While acknowledging that the problem is not unique to St. Mary, he says it must be addressed in the new year.
When I walk the street conducting general policing, the cry of the general public about these bikes. They drive them careless, reckless and dangerous. They have no regards to motorists or pedestrians on the road. They are not registered, and not only that, but what is really the nuisance about it is the noise, the loud noise. Now, it is our effort right here in Highgate and the entire Zone 3, Highgate, Richmond and Belfield, to rid the streets of these unregistered bikes, because persons complain bitterly, persons involved in accidents with these bikes, and they cannot be compensated because of the no insured.
Sergeant Ward further revealed that 2 motorbikes have been confiscated since the start of the year and made this appeal.
It was an operation in traffic management operation. They were parked, and when they saw the police, they tried to drive off. However, they could not leave quickly enough before we reach up on them. Hence, they ran and leave them. So we have taken them in our care. All right. So I want also to use this medium to appeal to the users of motorbikes, so get them registered and take them to the relevant authority, so the noise, the muffler system can be properly regulated to minimize the noise nuisance in our country.
And it's now time for the Business Minute.
Novamed Group has renamed the Knoxford Court Hotel to Summit. The company acquired the real estate in 2022 with plans to turn the space into a wellness village. Novamed says the company plans to build a smart business and opportunity campus at the location. In business regionally, the Guyanese government revealed a 5th major offshore oil field being developed by a consortium led by ExxonMobil at an estimated cost of $12.7 billion. It is expected to add another 1.3 billion barrels of recoverable oil reserves to the 10 billion barrel Guyana-Suriname basin. And in business overseas, FTX officials overseeing its bankruptcy have recovered more than $5 billion in cash and other liquid assets that may be used to help repay creditors. A lawyer for the failed crypto firm made the disclosure during a bankruptcy court hearing on Wednesday. It significantly raises the estimated amount of funds FTX claims to hold. Last month, FTX lawyers submitted filings that showed the company and its affiliates had a total of $1.2 billion in cash. The lawyers also said they had identified more than 9 million creditors, far more than earlier estimates of around 1 million. That's it for the Business Minute. I'm Cody Ann Barrett.
Now for a look at the top regional and international stories. Here's Anthony Lugg.
In the region, the World Bank has approved $100 million in financing to support Barbados' low-carbon economic development and resilience to climate change. The Washington-based financial institution said the Barbados Green and Resilient Development Policy Loan has two main pillars. The first focuses on green and blue resilient development. It also supports the reduction of marine pollution and management of natural resources in the context of climate vulnerability. In news further afield, flights seem to be back on track, but what was the cause of the 9,200 flight delays and over 1,300 flight cancellations on Wednesday? The Federal Aviation Authority says that was due to a corrupt file which was also found in the backup system. An investigation has been launched into how it happened, however, a cyber attack has been ruled out. As of early Thursday morning, just over 440 flights in, to, and out of the US were delayed according to flight tracking website FlightAware. And those were your top regional and international stories. I'm Anthony Lugg.
And we head to a quick break. When we come back, Karen Madden will have your midday sports report.